In 1980, 4 Catholic nuns vanished from a remote chapel in Northern California. No bodies, no notes, no signs of struggle. For 28 years, their disappearance was a haunting mystery until a priest returned to the chapel grounds and uncovered something horrifying buried beneath the surface. If you're drawn to real-life mysteries that unravel layer by layer, now let's go back to where it all began. Introduction. Eldon Hollow was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone. So when 4 devoted nuns disappeared one weekend in 1980, it didn't just shock the community, it shattered it. No explanation, no trace, just silence. And for Father Elias Morrow, the town's priest and brother to the youngest missing nun, that silence became a lifelong ache. The Anniversary Mass, July 12, 2008. A morning sun filtered through the stained glass of St. Agnes of Mercy Catholic Church, casting soft colors across empty pews. Father Elias stood at the altar finishing a memorial service that had become tradition. May the souls of the departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace, he said, voice steady, hands trembling. The congregation responded, Amen. After 28 years, the grief had dulled, but never left. He shook hands, greeted the elderly parishioners who still remembered the missing sisters. One woman whispered, Sister Mildred taught my children their catechism. Such a gentle soul. The 4 who disappeared. Sister Mildred Hayes, 68. Sister Joan Keller, 65. Sister Beatrice Namora, 28. Sister Ters Morrow, 23. Father Elias's sister. They had taken a short spiritual retreat to St. Dinah's Chapel, a modest white church nestled on the edge of the Shasta Trinity National Forest. It was supposed to be a weekend of prayer and peace, but none of them came back. The day they vanished, July 14, 1980, the nuns were scheduled to return to Eldon Hollow after 2 days of fasting and solitude. When they didn't arrive, Father Elias and police officers raced to the chapel. The building was silent, clean, undisturbed. No signs of a struggle, no broken windows, no bags, no clothing, no letters, just nothing. As if the women had simply been erased. The official theory authorities blamed a bear attack. After all, the chapel sat near dense forest black bear territory. But there was one problem. There was no blood, no damage, no evidence. And Father Elias never believed it. Unshakable grief. In the decades that followed, the priest clung to 2 things, his faith and a single photo. It showed the 4 nuns sitting on a wooden bench outside the chapel. Mildred and Joan were serene. Beatrice looked thoughtful. Tertz, his sister, smiled with eyes full of purpose. If I hadn't encouraged her calling, Elias often wondered, would she still be here? The urge to return. On the 28th anniversary, something changed. Father Elias stared at the photo at the chapel in the background and felt a strange pull. He hadn't been back there in 2 decades. But something told him now was the time. The missing chapel. He drove to the forest, the same route he had taken so many times, clutching missing persons flyers and praying for a miracle. But when he arrived at the old road that once led to St. Dinah's, it was gone. In its place, a paved private road, an iron gate, signs private property, no trespassing. The chapel had vanished, not just the people, but the building itself. A man named Redwood. He made a call to Harold Gibbons, the old caretaker. Sold in '82, Harold told him, to a man named Silas Redwood. He tore the chapel down. Father Elias felt a cold knot in his stomach. He had never been told, never notified, never consulted. His sister's last known location had been wiped clean, and no one thought to tell him. A cold welcome, determined Father Elias drove around the estate to a public road, hoping for a glimpse. What he saw startled him. A mansion, 3 stories, stone and timber, wealthy, intimidating, and wildly out of place. He gathered his courage and knocked. The door opened. Silas Redwood stood there, tall, silver-haired, and glaring. "Yes, good afternoon, sir. I'm Father Elias Morrow. You're trespassing." Their exchange was tense, cold, dismissive. Redwood wanted nothing to do with the past, nothing to do with the church, and especially nothing to do with what happened in 1980. "If the chapel's gone, why are you bothering me?" Redwood slammed the door in his face, but something in his tone, something in the way he said good riddance wouldn't leave Elias's mind. The radio and the voice. As Elias drove away, discouraged, his radio turned off, crackled to life, not with static, not with music, but with chanting, Gregorian chant, the same melody once sung by the sisters at St. DNA's. Then silence, then a cough from nowhere. The forgotten records. Father Elias couldn't sleep. The chant on the radio, impossible, inexplicable, echoed in his mind. He had turned the device off. He was certain. But more than the sound, it was Redwood's expression that haunted him, a mix of contempt and fear. The next morning, Elias drove to the diocesan archive, a dusty back room filled with yellowed folders and brittle paper. He asked for records on St. Denis, its history, the sale, anything that might show how and why the chapel disappeared. At first, the archivist shook his head. "There's nothing after 1980, he said. No deed transfers, no demolition permits. It's like the place vanished." But then Elias noticed a folder misfiled under St. Agnes. Inside 2 letters. The anonymous warning. The first letter was dated August 3rd, 1980, 3 weeks after the disappearance. Written anonymously. The chapel was never holy ground. Something darker lies beneath it. If you care for your soul, never return. No name, no return address. The second was stranger. Silas Redwood has taken what was once hidden, but he cannot bury the voices. They still sing. The man who dug too deep, Father Elias, began to research Silas Redwood. Born in 1939, raised in the Bay Area, philanthropist, real estate mogul, and according to a few local legends, fascinated with spiritual architecture. In 1979, he was investigated for unlawful excavation on native burial grounds. The case was dropped. No charges, but it painted a picture. Redwood wasn't just building homes. He was digging for something. The dream. That night, Elias dreamt of the chapel. It was whole again, whitewashed and peaceful. Inside, he saw the 4 nuns kneeling in prayer. Then, one by one, they turned to look at him, mouths open, but no sound, their eyes pleading. He woke up, drenched in sweat. He knew what he had to do. Into the woods again. Elias returned to the Redwood estate, this time under cover of night. He parked, walked through the tree line, and approached the clearing where the chapel once stood. It was quiet, too quiet, but he found something unexpected. A stone marker half buried with worn lettering. St. D&A's Chapel built, 1894. Still there, forgotten, he knelt beside it to pray, when the ground gave slightly beneath him. The cellar door, hidden beneath ivy and dirt, was a wooden hatch reinforced with rusted iron. Locked! But Elias had come prepared. He pulled a crowbar from his satchel, whispered a prayer, and pried it open. Below stone steps descending into pitch black, he clicked on his flashlight and began to climb down. Beneath the earth, the air was thick, stale, cold. The steps led into a narrow corridor, stone walls lined with old sconces. At the far end, a wooden door. He opened it. Inside, a crypt. No, something older, stranger. Bones lined the walls. Not human, animal, mixed, arranged deliberately. In the center, a circle of burnt candles. And at the center of that, 4 white veils, unmoving, undisturbed, laid out like offerings. The broken crucifix. Above the circle hung a crucifix cracked down the center. Its figure twisted, almost melted. Elias stepped inside, heart pounding. The temperature dropped. His flashlight flickered. Then a voice, "Why did you come?" whispered right behind him. He turned nothing, but when he looked back at the circle, one veil had moved, just slightly. The police report that never made it rattled, but determined Elias left and drove straight to the county sheriff's office the next morning. He demanded access to the original investigation files from 1980. They resisted at first, but a junior deputy remembered something. There was a sealed box, never logged. They brought it out, dusty, dented, locked. Inside photos, the chapel interior shots, a rope frayed, blood-stained, scratches on the walls, dozens of them all vertical like claw marks, and a single handwritten note. This was no bear. The missing report. Father Elias held the note in shaking hands. This was no bear. It was signed Deputy Marshal J. Kane. But there was no record of that deputy ever filing a report, no interviews, no testimony, nothing. Elias asked the clerk, "Is Marshal Kane still alive?" The deputy's face darkened. He died in 1982. Car accident. Off a cliff. No foul play ruled, but it felt too clean, too convenient, especially after what Elias had seen underground. Voices from the cellar. That night, Elias returned home, exhausted, disturbed, but driven. He uploaded photos of the veils, the broken crucifix, the bone-lined walls. He reached out to a Jesuit historian at Loyola University, Father Michel Traeger, a man known for researching lost Catholic rituals and ancient heresies. Michel called back within hours. "Where did you take these?" Elias hesitated, then answered. The voice on the line went cold. "That is not a chapel crypt. That's pre-Christian, possibly Mesopotamian, in California. Hidden, adopted. It happened more than you think. Ritual sites reused, even by missionaries." The forbidden book Michel visited 3 days later, with a book leather-bound Latin inscriptions, Clavis Ignis, or the Key of Fire. It described early desert ascetics encountering ancient cults, symbols of binding, chants meant to hold things beneath the surface. Michel flipped to an illustration, 4 veiled figures in a circle, candles burning. "This is not a prayer circle. It's a containment rite." Elias stared, whispering. They weren't trying to call something. They were trying to keep it in. The exorcist's account. Michelle contacted another name, Father Alonzo Mercer, retired exorcist, once involved in rural cases deemed too controversial for public record. They met in person. Elias showed him the cellar photos. Mercer grew quiet, then said, "That symbol, it's ancient, not satanic, older, Babylonian. It's a seal." "A seal for what?" Mercer paused. "Not for what, for who?" The legend of the bound one. According to Mercer, there were whispers within exorcist circles in the 1970s of a being unnamed, not of hell nor heaven, a thing that was bound beneath land now known as Northern California. Long before Europeans, long before the tribes, and every few centuries something happened to shake it loose. There are always four, Mercer said. Four who take the vow to keep it sleeping. If even one breaks, it wakes. What really happened in 1980? The theory forming in Elias's mind chilled him. The four nuns weren't just praying. They were guardians keepers of a seal. Perhaps they had been chosen or called. And in 1980, someone disrupted the rite, possibly by accident, possibly on purpose. And when the seal was broken, something awoke. Redwood's motive. Silas Redwood was known for funding spiritual digs. But one obscure article in a fringe archaeology journal mentioned his obsession with thin places, areas where the veil between physical and spiritual is weaker. He had mapped ley lines, built homes on them, destroyed a chapel on one. The hidden blueprints. Elias returned to the estate, not through the front door, but through the woods to the place where the cellar entrance still sat beneath ivy. He took photos, measurements. Back home, he compared the footprint to county land records. The cellar wasn't under the chapel. It was under something older, a burial mound, one unmarked by any tribal record, because it had been intentionally erased. The fifth veil. That night, Elias had another dream, but this time it was different. He saw the veils again, 4 of them, and then a fifth, not lying on the floor, but standing, watching. When he awoke, he knew there had never been only 4. There had always been 5. But who was the fifth? The fifth Father Elias dug deeper. Parish records showed only 4 sisters were assigned to St. DNA's in 1980. But an old group photo framed in the rectory hallway revealed something else. 5 women, same uniforms, same smiles. The fifth woman stood off to the side, taller, paler, her eyes cast down. The back of the photo was labeled Retreat, June 1980. Sisters, MJBT and C. No record showed a Sister C, no entry, no assignment, no mention after that day. She had been erased. Who was Sister C? Elias took the photo to Michelle and Father Mercer. Michelle examined the image closely. "Her habit is wrong," he said. "It's older, pre-Vatican II style, out of place." Mercer added, "She's not a nun." Elias felt a chill. Then what was she doing there? In rites like this, Mercer said, there is always a fifth, a keeper of the flame, the one who doesn't bind but watches the others, protects them, guides them, a witness, a final seal. And if she was gone too, the Redwood connection, Michelle and Elias, found a clue in the parish registry. The supply order for the chapel in 1980 included 5 sets of linens, 5 rosaries, but only 4 names signed the delivery receipt. The 5th signature, a scribble, barely legible, but the last name, looked like redwood. The daughter Elias confronted the public registry in Sacramento. In a dusty cabinet, he found it. Cecilia Redwood, born 1957. Mother unknown. Father Silas Redwood. She had been institutionalized in her teens, declared schizophrenic with mystical delusions, released in 1979. By mid-1980, she had vanished. The descent. Elias returned one final time to the cellar. This time he went alone. What he found had changed. The veils were gone. The bones were rearranged, now forming a spiral. At the center, a figure had been drawn in ash. Wings, horns, eyes, but not a demon. Something older, something watching. Then behind him, a voice. You shouldn't have come back. He turned. A woman stood there, late 60s, eyes like smoke, habit torn, hair gray. Cecilia, he whispered. She nodded. The final confession. She didn't run, didn't hide. She sat beside him on the cold stone and spoke softly. I tried to keep it asleep. She told him what the church never admitted, that the chapel had been built on sealed ground, that the four sisters had been chosen to maintain the ritual, and that Cecilia had been placed there by her father to sabotage it. But something happened. I felt it too, she said, the hunger, the pull, but I didn't break the seal. She claimed Redwood did, looking for power, secrets, immortality. He tore it open. They screamed. I ran. She had been hiding ever since. Justice, or Mercy Father Elias, asked what she wanted now. To finish what they started, she said, to bind it again. But I can't do it alone. He didn't hesitate. The two of them began preparing a new circle. Michel joined. So did Mercer. 3 priests, 1 witness, and the memory of 4 nuns who gave their lives to protect something none of them could name. The ritual reclaimed. They waited until the equinox. The air was dry, still, heavy with anticipation. Father Elias, Father Mercer, Michelle Traeger, and Cecilia Redwood descended into the chamber one final time. The new circle was drawn precise, unbroken. Candles in the cardinal points. Sacred text in Latin and Aramaic. A veil placed at each point where a nun had once knelt. And in the center, Cecilia. She stood where she had once fled. Eyes closed, arms open. The chanting began. Something answered. The stone walls groaned. The candles flickered, though no wind passed. One by one, the flames turned blue. Elias swore he felt a presence not evil, not divine, but ancient, cold, watching. The room began to darken around the edges. Michel gripped his crucifix. Mercer knelt, trembling. Then silence and a whisper from no one, from everywhere. You are not enough. The 5th must be chosen. Cecilia fell to her knees. She sobbed not in fear, but acceptance. It wants a 5th, she said. A new one? I've grown too old. Elias stood in stunned silence. If one of us takes her place, Michel said, the binding can hold. And if not, Elias asked. The seal breaks again. A choice of sacrifice. They drew lots. Each one prayed not to be chosen, and yet prayed not to be a coward. Father Elias drew the black stone. He looked to Cecilia. She smiled through tears. Thank you. She placed her veil in his hand. Now kneel, and don't speak, no matter what you hear. Elias stepped into the center, and the chanting resumed. Bound once more. The chamber rumbled. Elias felt heat in his chest, a pressure in his head, a chorus in his ears. He saw images not his own, women kneeling across centuries, temples, fire, collapse, sacrifice. Then a calm, a profound, unearthly stillness, as though the land exhaled, and it was done. 28 years later, again, Elias left the priesthood. He never gave a public statement, but the Redwood estate was quietly seized by the diocese. Cecilia disappeared once more. Some say she returned to the desert. Some say she walks the woods watching. The cellar was sealed. A cross planted at its door. No plaque, no explanation. But every year, on the summer solstice, 4 white veils are laid at its base. And now, a 5th. The truth beneath. We may never know what truly slept beneath that chapel. A myth, a spirit, a remnant of some older world. But we know this. 4 nuns vanished. 1 priest never gave up. And a truth too dark for daylight was hidden for nearly 3 decades. Some stories have no ending, only a new watcher. If this haunting tale of faith, sacrifice, and mystery moved you, like, comment, subscribe, so we can keep uncovering the lost truths hidden in time. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never ignore the silence beneath sacred ground.